On a busy Monday evening, right in the heart of Delhi, a car exploded near one of the country's most famous landmarks. Now, this wasn't just some tragic accident. In this explainer, we're going to unravel the incredibly complex and frankly disturbing story behind the Red Fort car blast. It's a story of a botched attack that reveals a whole new kind of threat. So picture this, it's 6:52 p.m. At a traffic light, a slow-moving Hyundai i20 suddenly erupts into a massive fireball. In the chaos that followed, the official story just kept changing. First, they said it was a CNG cylinder, then maybe a strange chemical fire, and finally, the chilling possibility came out. It was a terror attack. That confusion, right at the start, was the first sign that this was something very, very different.
So, let's start where the investigators did, at the scene of the blast itself. The evidence, or really the lack of evidence, kicked off a ton of questions. Because while the explosion was huge, it just didn't look like any normal bomb. Right away, the forensic teams were stumped by one simple thing. If this was a bomb, where was all the bomb stuff? There was no crater blown into the road, no leftover wires or bits of a trigger, and crucially, no shrapnel. You know, the nails and ball bearings that are the brutal signature of a typical IED.
And this really lays out the puzzle. On one side, you have what you'd expect from a conventional bomb: a crater, wiring, shrapnel. But what did the investigators actually find? A giant fireball, yes, but no electronic triggers were ever found, and no immediate traces of high explosives like RDX or TNT. The heat was so unbelievably intense that it might have just vaporized all the evidence, which led them to think, okay, maybe we're looking at something totally different, like an unconventional chemical bomb.
So with the crime scene raising more questions than answers, the next big clue was, of course, the car itself. Investigators started the painstaking work of tracing the Hyundai i20's 11-hour journey to figure out where it came from, and more importantly, who was behind the wheel.
Using over 100 CCTV clips, police pieced together the car's entire day. It starts at 7:30 in the morning at Faridabad, enters Delhi just after 8 a.m., and then, and this is a really key detail, it pulls into a parking lot near the Red Fort and just sits there for about 3 hours. It doesn't move again until 6:22 p.m., just 30 minutes before it explodes. That 3-hour wait became a huge point of focus. What was the driver doing?
So, who was this driver? The footage showed a single person, but his face was hidden by a mask. Eventually, though, investigators got an ID. And this is where the story takes a massive turn. He was identified as Dr. Umar Nabi, a doctor from Pulwama in Kashmir. And that name connected the single car blast to a much larger and far more sinister plot. And this really gets to the heart of it. That explosion near the Red Fort, that was not plan A, not even close. It was actually a desperate last-minute move, a panicked reaction after a huge counterterrorism operation had completely dismantled the driver's entire network just hours before. Now, to understand the driver's final actions, you need to know this term, a Fidiane attack. It's a suicide mission. The theory is that once Dr. Umar Nabi realized his whole crew was busted and that he was about to be arrested, he switched tactics. He decided to detonate the car he was in, turning his own end into an attack to cause as much damage as possible and avoid being captured alive.
And this was the network. Just look at these profiles. Dr. Umar Nabi, the driver who died. Then you have his associates, Dr. Mujammil Shakeel and Dr. Shaheen Syed, who police allege was a key recruiter for Jaish-e Mohammed's women's wing, and his friend Sajid Ahmed Mallah. This wasn't a group of unknown recruits. This was a terror cell made up of highly educated professionals, operating completely under the radar. And if you're wondering just how serious a threat this group was, well, this number says it all. In raids linked to the doctors who were arrested, police found 360 kilograms of ammonium nitrate at a university in Faridabad. That is enough explosive material to carry out several massive attacks. So the Red Fort blast, as awful as it was really just the ghost of a much, much bigger catastrophe that had just been prevented.
As you can imagine, this whole thing sparked a huge public debate. Was this an intelligence failure that let a bomb go off in the capital? Or was it actually a major success, since a much larger plot was stopped and the blast was just the last desperate act of a cornered man? On one side, you had some really sharp criticism. Comments like this one from a user on Reddit put the blame squarely on the government. But there was a strong counter-argument, also seen online. It's this idea that the whole fight is lopsided. As this user points out, intelligence agencies have to be right 100% of the time, but terrorists only have to succeed once. From this perspective, stopping the main plot and seizing those 360 kilos of explosives was the real victory here. But there's another really critical angle to this debate. Some analysts pointed to what could have been a huge procedural mistake. Apparently, police held media briefings about arresting the other doctors on November 7th. So the big question is, did that premature announcement tip off Dr. Umar Nabi? Did it essentially corner him and trigger his decision to carry out the suicide attack 3 days later? Okay, so let's zoom out for a minute and look at the biggest takeaway from this whole incident. Because beyond the blast itself, this case really pulled the curtain back on a deeply unsettling new trend in terrorism. It's something that's being called white-collar radicalization. The fact that it wasn't just one, but multiple doctors involved in this plot absolutely stunned investigators. It shows that highly educated professionals are now being recruited and they're using their respected jobs as the perfect cover.
This is a massive shift from the old stereotypes, and it creates a huge challenge for security agencies. I mean, how do you profile a threat when it looks like the person you trust to save your life?
And that leaves us with this final, really chilling question. You know, the entire system of counterterrorism is built on finding patterns, on looking for certain profiles. But when the person carrying out the attack is a doctor, someone who literally took an oath to save lives, how does the fight have to change? It forces a complete rethinking of not just who a terrorist is, but how we have to evolve to fight them.